Hey, and welcome back to Drag Conversations. I'm your host, Whitney Cowell. Joining me today is my friend Trent Elsten. Hey, Trent.
Hi there.
So for anybody that doesn't know you, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to recently.
Of course, my name is Trent Elsten. I live in Maryville, Tennessee, just south of Knoxville. Graduated from UT with my wife and got married right after college. And originally had plans of going to professional school at UT. Got into some hairy situations with addictions, and that's where it brought me to stay around Maryville and not to get my not to finish out professional school and become a veterinarian, as was the goal. So now I actually own my own business. I own a construction company here in Maryville and just operate pretty locally around Knoxville, out towards Sevierville and stuff around the mountains. Absolutely fell in love with it. I find myself able to be very useful to those in my community through my business, and so it's been incredibly rewarding. And so that's where I'm at today, and just do my best to try to help out with things like this and stay plugged in to the recovery community in my hometown.
Yeah, and I think it's important to stay connected, right? Because that's how we give back. Is if somebody was there for us and we needed it, it's really important to be there for the next person that's looking for a solution. So I love that you're still doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's good to see you. Yeah. We haven't seen each other in a number of years. Trent and I go way back, a little over 10 years back, actually, and learned that we had a little bit more in common in our adulthood than we thought. And that was through, our addictions and our paths to sobriety. So I would love to just dive right in and ask what happened. With as much or as little context as you'd like to give to that.
Well, I think because back whenever me and you were hanging out, I guess, are in college, and that's whenever I really started finding out how big of a blackout drinker I was, and I knew that I was blacking. I knew I wasn't remembering stuff, and I just thought this is what everybody else was doing, and I guess you and I might have been doing that, just drinking to oblivion. But I thought that's everybody else. I heard later on in recovery somebody was talking about how a six-pack was already over drinking, and I was like, that's not even a warm-up. What are they talking about? And so I just didn't even know how abnormally I was really drinking early on, but I just was forgetting more and more and more, not realizing who I had hurt, what I'd done, coming to in the craziest of situations, and that just became normal for me. I just continued to lower my standards more and more. But at the time, it was a work hard, play hard. I was in college. I thought that's what we were supposed to be doing. Yeah. So that's kind of how I took it and just kept on running.
Yeah. And I totally get that mindset of it's just a phase. I'm in college, and I survived a full year and a half in college before even having my first drink, but it escalated so fast. It was kind of scary, how far out of control it actually got.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, when did you realize it was a problem? What did that look like where it's kind of I might be an alcoholic type of moment?
Well, I was pretty bad, which is incredibly embarrassing, but I was an incredibly bad bedwetter. It was insane. It was insane. I was having a new puppy dog in your house pretty much. And I mean, my wife was trying to get me to sleep in the tub and stuff like that. And I just wouldn't. I mean, I was a grown man.
Bless your wife.
I had this reputation that I thought everyone knew about that I had to uphold. And I had to be the man of the house, and nobody was allowed to lock doors in my house. Nobody was definitely telling me how to drink or that I needed to eat something instead of drinking or whatever it was. Everybody that tried to make suggestions for me immediately got shut down. I was angry, selfish man at the time, and didn't know how bad my drinking was affecting everybody around me, whether it be just a social gathering, just being awkward, or whether it completely, ruining my wife's friendships with others and things like that, because she had to completely change who she was or how she acted because she thought that her husband may make a fool of himself or do something crazy, get in a fight or whatever. So that became normal for me to get into awkward altercations and find myself wet in the morning on somebody random's couch in a random house somewhere on a bench. I mean, it's insane the number of places I just woke up and came to in jail a couple of times. So the consequences started quickly adding up.
Yeah.
We got to a point where my standards were as low as they could be, and my wife said that this was not a lifestyle that she was willing to live. So she is who really kind of started pushing me to start seeking maybe a therapist or some form of recovery, just a community where I can plug in and be connected and learn how other people are doing this thing and living in sobriety.
Yeah. Did you end up going the route of both like therapy and a type of program, or did you like where did you start?
I got on Google, like anybody
Perfect.
that has no idea where to start would. Um, and I was so nervous about going and talking to someone about everything, like just telling my story, just talking about what had happened in my life and where I'm at now. And I wasn't ready to be honest with somebody. So I immediately went into recovery rooms, different programs around town that I could find, just to see what other people were doing, to talk, just to get in front of somebody. I
Right.
was not comfortable being on over the phone or doing this kind of thing on a computer or whatever. But I was willing to go talk to somebody else. For me, it was like, it felt like it was this top secret thing, like that I still had to hide from everybody. Everybody else knew. Everybody else knew that there was
We're
a problem.
usually the last ones to know that we're alcoholics.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So,
Yeah, I totally get that. And it's wild because everybody else knows, like they've lived through it, they've seen how we've behaved, they've suffered consequence. It's not just us, right? Like they suffer consequences too, sometimes like really, really big ones. And yet we carry this shame and this secret because I didn't tell my family I was sober until about 10 months in. And I think that was shocking enough of like, well, we pretty much knew that you were an alcoholic, but then and you know my family. But then like, what do you mean it's been 10 months? If you like, why didn't you let us support you? And so I think we do carry a lot of shame. And maybe some people's are different, but for me, it was like, no, I have to take care of this. And then I'll let you know when I feel like it's taken care of.
mm-hmm.
Did you have any feelings like that as you were walking towards that path of recovery? Or were you pretty open with people when you got sober?
I was pretty open with my family after, and I mean, I live a few hours away from my family. Like you were talking about being from the East Tennessee now as well, and we didn't get to talk to our families being back in Middle Tennessee, but I got a few hours buffer zone there, so I was able to be in recovery for a few months before it was ever even brought up. Before somebody cracked open beers and said, "Hey, Trent, you want one?" kind of thing, and that's what happened at my family's house around the pool or going to the lake or whatever. There was always going to be an opportunity where it was going to be presented to me. So I was pretty aware of that being something that might happen when I visited.
Mm-hmm.
So I was ready to have that conversation. I guess about 6 months in, it was
Okay.
between 6 and 8 months in is probably when it happened, and so I just went back home and visited, and then somebody made an offer, and then that's when I was like, well, I actually need to go and have a conversation. I just went ahead and told my whole family because it was my grandmother that was there in town, and she's very supportive of me working a program and staying sober. And so I just went ahead and made a family announcement kind of thing with my wife there and everything because Lindsay kind of looked at me and made eye contact with me and was like, here it is. Like, what are you going to do, Trent? And so that's when I just made the decision. It's better to go ahead and just let everybody know. Go ahead and just stay safe. Nobody's going to have, and it still gets offered to me every now and then and stuff at different family functions where a cousin, a distant family member, or a friend or something like that forgot. And it's just today, it's just no big deal. Back then, it was scary. So it was this thing that it was this nervous anxiety that was rising up in me. Like, when's somebody going to ask me to take a beverage? And now it's just it's just not a big deal. Today, I just have no desire whatsoever, and it's just a freaking miracle. Is the best way to say it because I just don't understand it. I just know that when I do these things, I get the results. When I stay plugged in with the program of recovery, maintain good friendships with people that are supportive of it, and keeps trudging this road and stumbling in the right direction, as they call it.
Yeah. So how was that received by your family?
I think my mom especially was just like, no, not my baby. Like, there's just no way. But everyone else was kind of like, yeah, checks out. Like, yeah, like we could see it, but nobody ever. I mean, everybody thought I was just such a happy guy. No one saw what was happening behind closed doors. Nobody saw whenever I was getting home super late and blackout, not knowing, not remembering pulling into my own driveway. having to run around and circle around my truck in the mornings because I didn't know how I made it back. Um, and so nobody saw that stuff because they were a few hours away. They just saw me coming for the weekend, partied up, and they think this is what I do on the weekends. They don't realize Trent's doing this every evening of every day of every week and just continuing this thing going. And they just didn't see that. So it was hard for some of them to accept it. But the moment I gave them just a couple of lighter stories, I didn't want to scare mom too much. But I think they quickly realized, okay, like maybe this is something Trent really needs. And they've been very supportive ever since.
That's great that you have the support of your family. And like I said, I know your family, so I'm not surprised that they're supportive. But gosh, what a gift, because some people don't, like, they just don't have that. The bridges have been burned to ashes. And so I'm really glad that you have a support system walking through recovery, because some people really have to start from absolute scratch to find that kind of support. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So jumping forward a little bit, what was one of the hardest truths or the hardest like milestones of recovery for you? And especially in early recovery, like, because that first year, there's so much happening and it feels like everything's happening so fast all the time, but time is not moving. It's really chaotic. So what was that first year like for you, and what was one of the hardest parts?
The first 30 days were probably the hardest for me because I wasn't ready for the solution yet, or I wasn't ready to give up on my old solutions yet. Is really the main thing. I hadn't let go quite yet, and I hadn't found someone that I was willing to do things their way yet either. So I was still dreaming about drinking. I was still felt like I was coming to, whenever I was really just slowly waking up and blinking my eyes open in the morning. And I had to realize that I didn't have a hangover. I had to realize that I was dry and I didn't have any laundry to do that morning. And about 30 days of that, those were probably the hardest time. I guess later on, whenever it came time to really get honest with someone about the demons that I was still kind of dragging along, that I wasn't willing to shed light on to other people yet. I wasn't willing to help other people with that stuff yet. It was still scary to me. That was another portion, because that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to do therapy, was because now I've got to tell somebody everything. I got to tell somebody every little bit of the squirrel cage fight that's going on up here. As I heard it said, the last two brain cells fighting with each other. Because I feel like I had killed off a lot of them, but somehow, I mean, we still are blessed. I'm still blessed to be able to run a company and do all this stuff. And I'm just continue to receive all kinds of gifts in this program whenever I stick to it. But yeah, it's crazy to see where I've come from and to hear people talk about it too. They're like, man, you look so terrible when you came in. And it's like, did I really? Like, I feel, I felt already, I was already starting to feel better just in those first few weeks, but people see the change. Like you said, other people see it faster than we do. And other people know that we might have a problem before we do also.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's amazing to go back and look at. I've erased most of my pictures at that point, but like, I mean, by the time I found a group of people to go through recovery with, I mean, like, I looked like a ghost. My skin was turning gray. Like, I was starting to have liver issues. And I remember my mom being like, there's just nothing happening behind your eyes. Like, your sparkle is just gone. And that was really tough. And so, like, going from that and then them seeing me 10 months in is like, but that's like, I think that's such a testament to how it impacts our entire being, like our spiritual selves, our mental selves, and our physical selves. It's just a lot of times what people have to reference off of is the physical part. And so, like, I've been in some places where, like, I walk in because I travel a lot for work. And so whenever I'm out of town, I love going and meeting people, in the rooms. And so I'll go to one and somebody was like, you don't look like you belong here. And I was like, first of all, that was really rude. And second of all, I wash my hair these days. So thank you. Just kind of is what it is. So, okay, that was one of the hardest parts. Now I want to know, like, what is it given back to you? What is one of the biggest transformations that's happened through your recovery?
I guess the biggest thing for me is just an inner peace, as a quick answer that is all encompassing. I feel like, so it's also incredibly vague. So just this inner peace where I don't have anything to be afraid of today. And if something comes up, typically it's something that I feel that God just wanted me to focus on that day for some reason. Maybe there's some sort of and just little thoughts are what I see as God these days. Like little, like when I think of you and I call you or shoot a text to somebody because I just thought of them in passing. And those little things, those little opportunities to connect with other people is kind of how I see my higher power. And so really that's kind of that's where I find, I guess, the greatest reward in the program is just that peace and just a lack of fear. Of course, I still get fearful all the time. I'm still afraid of a lot of stuff, but I'm not just a walking ball of anxiety like I was before recovery. I follow some principles and practice a couple of rules for myself and with my other guys that I practice this thing with. And I include them in my day. I include a lot of prayer in my day. And there's just such a serenity that comes from that. And that I think is the greatest reward. Just not being afraid anymore, or not having to be, if I do this thing, if I take the steps that I've been taught to take.
Is that type of peace something you had before your addiction?
Very, very rarely, maybe. And it was fleeting. And I would say it was more of a sense of feeling better. Whenever I got to my solution, just walking into a store and knowing that I was about to buy a drink, I already felt better as soon as I got to the parking lot. And I know now, I mean, it's highly unlikely that even a cop is going to stop me now. Like, I've already made it here. Now I got to be careful when I'm getting out of here and pulling out of here, trying to crack open cans and stuff like that, trying to drive with it or whatever, because it was every day. Stopping at the gas station on the way home from work and drinking all the way until I got to wherever my wife was at, and hopefully she would be drinking too, so I could keep going for the rest of this evening. And so, you know, that was just a sense of feeling a little bit better. There was never true peace. It was still just shoving everything down, saving everything for tomorrow, and then never actually really doing anything about it. And that there was just no peace that came from that. It would never serve me well. But it was the only thing I knew. It was the solution I had at the time.
Do you think that you had, I'm trying to think of the way to word this. So you have a really vibrant spiritual life now. Is that something that you like rediscovered or that like matured in your recovery, or was recovery the way that you found that to start with? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I originally went to church a lot with my family back in the day, so I had a belief, but I never knew what a working faith was. I just believed in a God. Still didn't understand him back then as much as I probably do now. I always like to say that the ocean that is God cannot fit in the teacup that is, you know, my mind, and it's just not happening. I don't have to know that today, and that was what was a big problem before. Was I felt like I had to know. I had to be able to convince you that I knew, and then convince you to agree with me that I was right. And that was one thing a lot of guys early on taught me is, you know, you don't have to be right. You're right as soon as you're right. It's you think everybody else has to think you're right. And so that was pretty funny for me. And now I'm rambling on, and I kind of forgot where I was at with the question.
Okay. Just, you know, your spiritual life before addiction versus like after addiction, because I also was like raised with, I had a foundation, I would say, like throughout my addiction, I never lost that foundation, but it had a lot of cracks in it. And through like recovery, I learned some of the pieces of that just needed to be like busted up and something new put down. But then there were other parts that I think honestly carried me through my recovery, because I was in some dark mental spaces where it's like, I needed that like little tiny like grain of sand of hope that I had left, or else I don't know that I would have made it to the other side.
Yeah. And like you said, having to have some stuff overhauled, and then what is salvageable from this? Because I think that there was a lot that I learned that was salvageable that I was able to use, and from my previous religious training or understanding.
Yeah.
However, the relationship is what had to be completely overhauled. I didn't have a
Mhm.
trust. I didn't have any. I was God, is how I view it, because I mean, I wasn't praying to a God. I wasn't, acting on principles to try to be of use to a higher power in my life. None of that was going on. It was all, what does Trent want? What do I want to do today? And what do I want to accomplish today? And that, got in the way of everything else. And so I think that working faith and knowing that, I try not to maintain expectations today, but there are some healthy ones. And it's, whenever I do practice the principles of the programs that I'm practicing, whenever I do include other like-minded growing individuals in my life, whenever I do pray and meditate and try to include a higher power in my day, I get good results.
Yeah.
Every single time. It really never fails. If I'm not getting good results, there's something I haven't quite let go of, or I haven't surrendered fully. So that's kind of, I guess, the biggest changes in my spiritual life, I feel.
Yeah. And I think it is our sickness will tell us things where we start to like take some of that back. Like, I've handed this over, I've surrendered this thing, and then I don't realize it, but just, the right hand doesn't know what the left is doing, and I'll just like reach over and like take a pinch off, put it in my back pocket, and it comes back up, later on. And that's I feel like for me, that's one of the most frustrating parts of looking at myself with sober eyes, and also benchmarking that against my spirituality is I am not a finished product, even though I'm now a sober person. And that can be really, really frustrating, where I have to accept that I will continue to struggle. And some of the things are things that I will struggle with until my last breath. And that's okay, but it's how I struggle today it's better than it was before. I struggle different. And I know what to do with those things. I have a set of solutions, not just like one fallback plan of like drown it and see what happens. And so that's I feel like that was something that took beyond early recovery to accept in myself, is like, yes, I'm not perfect, but it's like, oh, I'm still making some of these mistakes. I can still be a really, really selfish and inconsiderate person. And it's not that I mean to, and it's not because I'm drunk. And what does that mean? Well, it just means that you're still a human being. And that, honestly, I think that's been one of the biggest challenges, is like that year 2 to 3 mark, where it's like, okay, I thought we were over this.
Oh
I
man,
don't know if you can relate to that or not, or if that made any sort of sense, but
no, that's part of what was so attractive about recovery for me. I think was the fact that the grace that I found there,
Mhm.
because and the mercy. I remember somebody telling me early on. They said, Trent, it's either justice for all on one side or it's mercy for all on the other. And they said you got to pick one, because it's either going to be justice for you and everybody else, or you're going to give mercy to you and everybody else. And I said, you know what? I think I'm going to pick mercy on that one, because that's the beauty of mistakes. Is I guess that's what I heard is the definition of growth one time, was that it's making the same old mistake just a little more gracefully, or making a new and finer quality mistake. And I liked the sound of that, because that gave me a little bit more time. It gave me some time to be loved and accepted where I was at, and gave me a ton of room to grow. And so I think we tend to grow a lot more quickly whenever someone's not, setting requirements upon us. I mean, I'm an alcoholic, and I don't like requirements. I don't like obedience. I don't like words like surrender, things like that. I like, I like being the head. I like having control, I guess is the best way to put it. And so whenever I was finally able to give up that control over everything else, is whenever I finally actually found it. It's kind of that one of those weird paradoxes.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's the willingness to change. And that can be really scary, because like in our addiction, it's a pattern, right? We know what to expect. I'm going to do that. For me, it was, I'm going to get really messed up. I'm going to do something really stupid or embarrassing or shameful. And then somebody's going to tell me about it. I'm going to open my phone and find it. And then I'm going to have to lay low for a little bit, and then everybody will like forget about it. And I can do that a couple of times with this group of friends, but then I need to start making new friends. And so it was just this cycle that went on for years. And what I heard early on that was really impactful for me was that we often choose the familiar pain over the unfamiliar freedom. And not knowing what that freedom was going to look like, or where that was going to take me, or what I'd have to sacrifice to have it, that type of unfamiliarity was not, I tiptoed very slowly into that. Whereas like my, familiar pain, I would dive in head first. So that's, the surrender for me was the willingness to say, okay, I'm going to take another step forward and have no idea what's going to happen next. But it works out.
Absolutely. I think someone told me too that I had to be willing to be willing to be willing. And I think that early on, that's exactly how it is. Like, first off, I just have to ask for the willingness before I even can get off the couch and start at this thing.
Yeah. And so if somebody is still struggling today and is listening to this podcast, because I don't know who listens to this thing, but what type of advice would you give them? Somebody that maybe is still in that place of hopelessness.
Find somebody to follow, grab onto somebody's coattails that has what you want. And I think someone explained it to me the best way and said that I had to find someone that wasn't like who I was, but somebody that used to be like me. Somebody that had a light about them that seemed a little lighter on their feet. And I just ended up asking a guy at a meeting one time, how he did it and why he was so dang happy. And he just said it would be an honor to give away what was so humbly given to me. And that's it. That's the secret right there is, it's about helping somebody else. And whenever I help somebody else, it gets me out of me every single time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think as long as we're just willing to show up, I think that's the hardest thing to do is that first time you have to go in and, ask somebody for help. Now, people that have been doing this well are pretty good about looking out for the new person and going up and asking them if they can be of service to them. But whenever I show up, whenever I showed up back then, I wasn't too inviting looking. I don't think people wanted to come up and say, "Hey, how are you? Can I get you a cup of coffee?" So I had to try to be as open as possible, be ready to be uncomfortable, because you're going to be in front of a bunch of people you don't know sometimes. But if you can get past that initial nervousness and anxious step of just being around some people you don't know that actually really love you, whenever you give them a chance to talk with you a little bit, whenever you're willing to just not have any expectations of other people, not have any predispositions of what they're thinking about. Because that was a big problem for me, is I thought everybody was thinking about me and what I look like right now, or what my hair is, what I sound like, or whatever. And so I had to get past all that stuff of the things that I thought I knew, so I could learn something new.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody thinks about me as much as I do. That's the lesson that I had to learn. But I will say, if somebody wants to experience God's love, sit down in a room full of alcoholics, a room full of addicts, because you'll never feel so embraced and so seen and so known. And that is by far, as a new experience, probably one of the most unsettling feelings. That and saying out loud for the first, I almost threw up the first time I said I was an alcoholic. Like I started physically sweating. I was like, this is not good. Everybody knows. And I remember telling somebody, like, I told my therapist, everybody's going to know. And she was like, everybody there is already an alcoholic. And I was like, oh yeah. It's just, that was news to me, because I was so focused on self, and walking in there and having, getting sober. And there's never a right or wrong time to get sober, but your 20s, when everybody's out partying, is a really unfortunate time frame. And having people want to take me under their wing and be like, you're my daughter's age, and having other people, that are 10 years older than me that are like, oh, I wish I could come in here when you did. And then just the variety of people and the amount of knowledge. And like you said, absolutely nobody wanted to keep that to themselves. Everybody that I talked to wanted to share something with me. And it was typically words of encouragement or wisdom based on what I was willing to share with them that day. And I think that's why probably you and I both stick around, is because somebody did that for us. And it is an honor to be able to be that person for somebody else. You know, there's going to be days where I still need that encouragement from other people. And I really do believe that you have to give it to keep it. So that's my rant on on early recovery. But is there anything else that I didn't ask you about that you want to share about your story?
I don't know. I guess that's pretty much the big portion of it. Because I was kicked out of vet school, and they kindly ask you to leave. They meet up with a group of professors, and they were like, "Why is your GPA so low? And why are you getting D's in these classes that you should be making, at least B's and C's in and stuff?" And they kindly asked you to leave. And so I had to call my parents and tell them that I was dropping out of vet school. And so then from there, I just kind of had to find a job and find some way to be useful around town, to my family at least, to pay some bills. And so that's when I think when my drinking really took off. And I just was able to continue to like we had said, lower my standards down, and kind of became a recluse. And eventually did find a job as a carpenter, and that's how I got into construction. And ended up working for a fantastic company, with some. It was more on the religious side of things than I was used to, but some very religious men that worked for that carpentry company. And that's how I initially, I think, got plugged into just a better life, to know that there's guys out there that are living a lot better than I was. And I still continued to drink for 5 years after I met those guys. But they were just planting little seeds for me to see that there was a better way of living out there. And then whenever my wife finally, sent me to some form of therapy or recovery, and then I found guys that drank like I drank too. And that's really what made the biggest difference, is I met people that had the same experience that I'd had. I didn't need, unfortunately, or I wouldn't, not that I did what I needed or not, it's that I wouldn't listen to someone that hadn't actually been through what I was going through.
Yeah.
And like you said, having to give it away to keep it, I think that's the secret to the whole thing, is just looking for the next person to help. And now I can see it better than ever, because I've been there and I've done that, and it's tough. And so I know how they feel. And so I always try to reach out to the newcomer whenever I get to have an opportunity to have an interaction with them.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great episode. If somebody is maybe looking for someone to talk to, maybe they're ready to ask for help and they maybe want to contact you, what's the best way that somebody could do that?
Calling me on my cell phone. I don't know how I need to go about giving that to you to give out, or if I just need to say it. How do I do that?
This is broadcasted everywhere. So if you want to say it, but that's, I'm not going to be held responsible.
I mean, I hope nobody sells my information, but if somebody really had a drinking problem, they'd be more than happy to contact me on my work cell phone. I mean, that's the best way you're going to contact a business owner, I think. And it's 615-812-6350. Again, it's 615-812-6350. And that's my personal cell phone. So please don't do anything with it. But if you need to call and want to chat, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about what's going on in their recovery.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being willing to be that person for somebody else. And I think we're at time. So for everybody else, we will see you next week. Thanks, Trent.
Thank you.